This offseason has already looked a lot different than last offseason for the Nashville Predators. But is next year just going to be more of the same?
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday and happy 4th of July. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Do want to shout out our Locked On Predators insider community and all of our everyday listeners who hang out with us every day and talk Nashville Predators hockey. I am Emma Lingan. I'm an NHL host and reporter with the Hockey News. I am normally joined by my partner in crime, Ann Kimmel, but this week I have a different partner in crime in Robby Stanley from 1025 The Game here in Nashville. Here to, really no one can replace Ann, but Robby's going to try. Before we get into, we got a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about Robby talked to Andrew Brunette earlier today, and we're going to get the latest from him. We're also going to kind of look into our crystal balls a little bit and see if we can project what the forward lines and defensive pairings are going to look like for the Nashville Predators this season. And then we're going to take a quick look at some former Preds around the NHL. But before we do any of that, do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Robby, happy 4th. How are we today?
Happy 4th. Doing very well. Happy birthday, America. How are you?
Yes, happy birthday, America, indeed. So putting you on the spot here early in the show because you had the opportunity to speak with Predators head coach Andrew Brunette yesterday on the radio on 1025 The Game. And so just kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit and see if he maybe gave you any interesting nuggets we can chew on.
Well, probably the thing I was most curious to really find out from him was a couple of things. Number one, the size on defense, specifically, what is that going to do for your team? What is that going to do for your lineup? And how are you going to try to deploy new tactics that way? So that was one thing. And then the other thing, I just straight up asked him at the end of the interview about, it was no secret that you didn't know whether or not you're getting fired at the end of last year. So what was it like kind of dealing with all that? So I'll start there for a second. I thought his answer that he gave there was pretty interesting. I mean, there was a little bit of coach speak in there just because he went into the, I've been around this league for a long time. I know how the game works. I was a player for a long time. I know how cutthroat it is. But then he talked about how he's basically just been working all summer, reading different things, bouncing different ideas off people and coming up with some solutions that he's going to try to see if they work heading into next year. And look, there's not much that he can say, I know, that's going to change Predators fans who are out on his mind. It's not really a thing you could say. You just got to go do it, right? He's got to go and he's got to make the proper adjustments, and they got to be way better next year than they were last year. But I thought the way he answered that question and kind of talking about how, he thought about some of those things with his job, but he didn't really allow himself to think about it too much because he knows how the game works. And look, I think Andrew Brunette is very aware that if they don't start well this year, it's going to get loud around him quick. They're going to have to start really fast this year. So I found that interesting. I asked him specifically about Perbix and Hague and what adding those two guys can do from a size perspective. And everybody looks at the size and say, oh, that's great, they got bigger, awesome. But what does that actually mean? What do you do? How do you apply that to a strategy? And he talked about basically the idea behind it is they're trying to get people out of the way so Juuse Saros could see the puck. That's in layman's terms, that's kind of what he said. And he said, there's some different D-zone coverage things we're going to do. He said there's some different things that you can do with bigger, more and he also likes the mobility from both those guys. But there's some different things you can do with those guys on defense. And he didn't get into the weeds of exactly what they're going to be running a lot. But basically, he said the idea of it is Juuse Saros got screened way too much last year. He couldn't see enough pucks. And if you got bigger bodies in there that are clearing out the traffic in front more often, it gives your goalie a better opportunity to see the puck and make saves. And he said, I think the words he used were he wants to see Juuse Saros return to the superstar goalie that we know that he is. So clearly, if you hear Barry Trotz talk and you hear Andrew Brunette talk, they're trying to really help out their goaltender. They felt like they let Juuse Saros down last year. We'll see. I said yesterday on the radio that I'm glad that they're getting bigger on defense. I hope that they're way better defensively. I think they will be improved. But this is a big year for Juuse Saros. Like, I don't really want to hear any excuses for Juuse Saros this year. Like, it's the contract's kicking in. It's time for you to play like you're getting paid. And he hadn't really done it the last 2 years, so it's time to see if he can do it now. But I found that interesting. It's basically the idea behind getting bigger on defense was, let's see if your goalie can actually see the puck. That may help him stop it.
Yeah, maybe. I think that's interesting. And I'm maybe a little bit more lenient on Saros than you are. I'm a big UC Saros apologist, and I think that the team absolutely let him down last year. And I think that, talking about, oh, he can't see the puck, he keeps getting screened. As soon as people start throwing out his size being the issue, it's like, well, how come it wasn't an issue before this year? Like, right. Why wasn't it an issue? And I kept talking about it's the play of the defense in front of him. Now, at the end of the day, yes, he's the last line of defense. He needs to stop the puck. That's his literal job. But I think that, the play of the defense has so much to do with it. And I think that in Saros's case, this team and this fan base are so used to him stealing games for them.
Yeah.
At a, with a good amount of regularity, he was stealing games for them that they really had no business winning. And last year he didn't do that. And so he wasn't bad, I don't think. I mean, he looked like a mere mortal, I think. Yeah. And it was the defense in front of him. Talking about the addition of size on defense, I do think that's important. You mentioned the mobility though. I think that's really important because we've seen size with no mobility, and that is named Luke Schenn. And maybe not the fit for Andrew Brunette's system. You need to be able to skate really well. And I think that people are maybe a little bit, that was supposed to be Brady Shea's selling point, right? Was his skating and his mobility for his size. But then, of course, he obviously didn't have the best year last year. A lot of people talking about, I thought this guy was supposed to be good at skating. He's tripping over his feet, whatever. I do think we saw Brady Shea improve from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. I've also mentioned this before that historically, if you look at all of his career stats, his statistically worst seasons have been his first season in a new market. So like his first season in New York and then his first season in Carolina. So I think that like that's important to keep in mind. How, in your opinion, either based on what Andrew Brunette said or just your own opinion, how much do you think, the improvement, like, yes, of course, they've added those two key pieces on defense, but how important is it that they, like the guys who are still there, really play much better than they did last year?
It's huge. I mean, it probably doesn't get talked about enough, but I think two guys specifically, like Josi has got to be better than he was last year. And there's a lot to that now. Like there's the concussion concern that, look, I've known Roman since he came up in the league. It's concerning. Like I remember early in his career, he had a concussion problem and they gave him a 7-year contract with a $4 million cap hit. And people thought they were nuts. They were like, he's had like 3 concussions so far. Why are you giving him a 7-year contract? And it ended up being like one of the greatest deals in the history of franchise. Like it was awesome. Like he was the most probably underpaid defenseman in the league for like a 4-year span. And now you got the POTS diagnosis on top of it. So look, I'm not a doctor. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like for a high level professional athlete to deal with that. I can only go by what they're telling me. And what they're telling me is the recovery is going good and he's in a good spot. So if he's in a good spot and he feels like he's able to play at a high level, well, what exactly is that level going to be? Is it going to be like it was last year, which I thought by Roman Josi's standards was below average, or is it going to be the Roman Josi that we've grown accustomed to seeing over the years? I mean, the one thing to keep in mind there is he's 35, right? Like, he's not going to be prime Roman Josi forever. So can he still be a really good player? Does he have one more Norris Trophy caliber year in him? I don't know. We're gonna begin to find out. Shea's a big one. Shea, I thought, played better as the year went on. I thought he got better in the second half of the season. He was clearly more comfortable in the second half of the season, and that was with a defense core around him that was no good. And I'm not trying to disrespect Nick Blankenberg because I thought he did a good job last year, and it was a really good story for him. To me, Nick Blankenberg is probably like a seventh defenseman, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I think that's what he is in the NHL. So I thought it was encouraging, at least, that Shea, as the year went on and as the situation around him was deteriorating on defense, I thought he improved and I thought he got better. And I think if you're a Predators fan, that's a good thing, and that's something to feel good about with him specifically heading into next year. Look, you've watched Brady Shea for a long time, Emma. I've watched Brady Shea for a long time. Brady Shea is not as bad as he was in the first half of last year. Like, he was just sometimes I was watching him out there. I was like, who is this? Like, it's not Brady Shea. So I feel pretty good about what they're going to get from him this year. But those two guys are so important, because if those two guys aren't good, then to me it really doesn't matter all that much what Nick Hague and Nick Perbix are going to do. Those two guys still have to be who carry that defense.
And that's what I think is so important here, that we don't lose sight of, because we're talking about, you needed to fix the defense. You needed to add some pieces. You need to add some size. Barry Trotz did that, but that doesn't, take any of the onus off of the guys who are already there to improve the way that they played last season. And we'll see how they play together as a unit. Coming up, we are going to talk about how these defensemen are expected to play together as a unit, as well as the forwards. We're going to try to look into the future, knowing that things can change between now and then, but we're going to try and give our best guess at what the lines and defensive pairings are going to look like for the Predators next year. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. With Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay. There are no hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Robby, I always hate doing this. I really just, it's too stressful for me. Trying to, and putting things in words, and, now it's out there, it's on the internet. Now everyone can go back to this and be like, hey, remember when you were wrong about this? But I'm going to do it anyway. Knowing that, it's still early July, we've still got time. Things could theoretically happen between now and the start of the season. But for the most part, I think the general, the core of the roster is what it's going to be for the Nashville Predators. So with that in mind, I think because Barry Trotz didn't go out and make big splashy moves in free agency, which was a good thing. I think some fans are maybe a little concerned about, oh, well, he didn't do anything to fix the forward group and it's just going to be more of the same and they can't score and blah, blah, blah. But I think that, maybe it will be. I don't know. But I think that right now we have to assume, by all accounts, that last year was a fluke in terms of just the complete and utter lack of goal scoring. And once this group gets more comfortable together, and they can get more of a rhythm and they can start putting the puck in the back of the net. I think a lot of that is going to come from finding consistency in the line combinations. That's been a big thing that Andrew Brunette has come under fire for quite a bit, is the line blender here. So I'm going to start at the top here. If you're Andrew Brunette and you're going to try your hardest to actually keep lines together for more than, I don't know, a shift, because sometimes that's all it took, who would you put? Who's your top line, your top forward line for the Predators with the roster the way it is right now?
I think my top line would be Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Marchessault. And it's tempting to put Stamkos up there. I like Stamkos best on the left wing. And I think that's able to open up his one-timer some. And I know it's tempting to put him on the right. It's tempting to put him down the middle, frankly, with what their center depth looks like. But they've kind of said they don't want to do that. So I don't think they're going to do that. So I will go Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Marchessault and see if from the hop they can generate a little bit more chemistry than they were able to do when that trio was together last year.
That's exactly what I had. I'm thinking Forsberg, O'Reilly, Marchessault. Again, I do think that the Stamkos question is important here in terms of, does he play on the wing or does he play center? And I think a lot of people are tempted, like you said, to have him play center, because if you look at the rest of their centers, it's like, it's kind of a barren wasteland down there. So I think that that's where the temptation is. But I do agree. I think that you are, and it's no knock on Stamkos. Obviously, he is, perfectly capable of playing center, but I don't think that you're getting the most out of him that you can when he's not playing on the wing. I think it's better if he has a playmaking center who can get him the puck. Again, I don't know really who that is. The Predators don't really have one of those either. But I think that, for right now, that is kind of where you need him. I also like the idea of spreading the wealth a little bit and putting Stamkos on that second line. So move into the second line then. Who do you have centering Stamkos and who do you have on the other side?
So I've got Svechkov centering Stamkos. And the reason for that is frankly because I don't want Erik Haula playing second line center. And we know Michael McCarron's not going to play second line center. I would rather take a shot with the young guy and see if he can handle it. And I know it sounds a whole lot like Novak last year, and that it took about half a period to realize that wasn't going to work. But if it was me before that, but like I look at,
I think Robby knew it wasn't going to work before it even started.
I think the day after they signed those guys, I was like, too bad Tommy Novak's the center, huh? You might have to change that up. But I would start with Svechkov, and hopefully he's got a burst in him from a year last year and now to a full year in the NHL where he can really elevate. The one thing that I really like about him, and I pay attention when Stamkos told me this a lot last year, was he's got really good speed down the middle. And nobody else really has that. Like Stamkos can do it. Stamkos has got good speed. But again, I don't think Barry Trotz and Andrew Brunette won any part of Stamkos at center this year, just based on some of the things I've heard. So I think Svechkov's speed that he's able to generate, he may not be ready for playing second line center, but I would rather take my shot with him and leave Erik Haula in a role where I feel like he's probably best suited, which is in the bottom six. So I would go Stamkos left wing, Svechkov down the middle, and I'd probably have Michael Bunting on the right. I've waffled back and forth between him and Evangelista because they really need to kickstart Evangelista, and that may be the way to do it, is to put him with those two. But for now, I'll start with Bunting on the right side over there.
Yeah, I kind of go back and forth between those as well. And I like the idea of Svechkov as the 2C because, first of all, when they got rid of Novak, that was essentially saying, okay, this is our guy. Svechkov is our guy. That's our next center. And maybe his ceiling is as a 2C, and that's fine, but you need to see what he can do. And I think that, Barry Trotz has even said it. Now we need Andrew Brunette to execute it, but I think that what Barry Trotz has said is that, it's all about, we got to give these opportunities to the younger players now. And it starts with a guy like Svechkov. Again, I think I think what Andrew Brunette would probably rather do, based on just what we've seen from him over the last couple of years, he'd probably put Haula in that spot because Andrew Brunette's really, really a big fan of the reliable veteran. And, that's where I almost feel like maybe Colton Sissons being gone might be a good thing for someone like Fedor Svechkov, because I think it can give him more of an opportunity there. But yeah, I think we need to see Brunette execute what Trotz is saying about giving the younger kids those opportunities. And I agree. I think with Evangelista for the last couple seasons now, we've seen him thrive in those top 6 roles when he's given that opportunity with more consistency. So I think that might be the way to do it, like you said, to unlock him. But I still don't trust Andrew Brunette to trust him with that opportunity yet. So I would say maybe Bunting as well. All right, third line, we got Eric Halla in the center. Who you got on the wings?
Yeah, so on the right side, I'll go Evangelista. So Hall and Evangelista together. I think the left side, it needs to be a young guy, and whether that's Wood or whether that's who I would choose, and that's Kimmel. They need Kimmel to go this year. Like it feels like he's been around forever. If you look at it, he's 20, so it's not like he's been around all that long, but he's played a lot in the American Hockey League. He got a brief cup of coffee last year. That's who I need to, if I'm the Predators, I'm hoping makes a big time push in camp, and that he makes enough of a statement in camp where you feel like he's ready to go right from the jump. He may not. I think there's a couple different options you could have there on that left side. But if Kimmel's making the team, I really don't have any interest in playing on the fourth line. So I want him in that spot next to Halla and Evangelista. So that's where I'll have him on that spot.
Yeah, that's another concern too, is like when we would see the younger kids come up, they immediately get put on the fourth line with Michael McCarron and Cole Smith, which again, no disrespect to those two guys because they do a lot of things very, very well, but it's not really the highest skill combination that you want to put, a guy like Kemmel with, for example, if you want to see his scoring. I really hope that we see more from Kemmel at training camp this year. I'll be honest, when he came up for his cup of coffee last year, he did not look ready.
I agree.
The moment looked way too big for him. And that's okay. That's fine, but I think that can't happen again. Like when they bring him up a second time, he needs to look ready. That doesn't mean that he necessarily stays for the entire season, maybe, goes back, whatever, but it can't be because he doesn't look ready for the NHL. I will say, for example, Ozzy Weisblatt looked ready for the NHL.
I agree.
And I think that Kemmel just looked scared. And that's fine, but I think that we need to see a little bit more from him. I don't know if I thought it was interesting talking about Wood. We talked to him on the first day of development camp and asked him, like anything that really stood out to him, about making the jump to the NHL. And it's one of those things that sounds like, well, duh. But if you think about it, he was like, yeah, it's really hard to score. It's really hard to score in this league. The goalies are really good. And so I think that that's something that I think he will benefit from playing more in the American Hockey League before he comes back to the NHL. Again, I don't think that he necessarily, like, I wouldn't be mad if he's on the opening night roster, but I do think that he could benefit from some more time. So we'll see what happens there. So I guess that leaves fourth line being McCarron, Smith, and LaRue. Am I right?
Yeah. I like that combo together. And LaRue, I think LaRue has some potential to elevate eventually into more than that, but that's probably where I'd start him.
Yeah, I just worry about him because, like, I agree. I think he does have more potential than that. I don't want the Predators to bury him down there and turn him into a fourth line grinder. We know he can play that role and he can do it well, but I do think he's got some more offense that we haven't seen from him yet. All right. Now on the defense, we talked a little bit about this yesterday with the additions of Hague and Perbix. So are we thinking it's Roman Josi and Nick Hague on that top pairing?
I think it's going to be. And I understand if you're a Predators fan, that scares you a little bit, but I think that's what it's going to be. I would probably have Hague on the left and Josi on the right. And I know both of them really can play on either side, but I like the idea of having Josi's one-timer opened up a little bit more in the offensive zone. And Josi, I mean, we know this, watching him skate and his hands, I just feel like he's probably better equipped to handle some of those awkward moments when you're playing on your offside on the backhand a little bit more than Hague would be. So I would go Hague on the left and Josi on the right.
Yeah, Yossi is just kind of a rover. Like he doesn't really play aside, honestly. He's all over the place out there. And I think, I understand, like you're saying, if that scares you a little bit, putting Hague with Yossi, but in terms of just the type of game he plays, I like this a lot. I like it better than, at one point last year, it was Roman Yossi and Justin Barron. Like that's two very similar, I don't want to say similar defensemen because that's maybe pumping Justin Barron's tires a little bit too much, but similar in the way that they are both offensive defensemen.
Yeah.
Now, Roman Yossi is also very defensively responsible. Justin Barron could use some work there, but I think the point is you need to have Yossi with a stay-at-home defenseman, with a real meat and potatoes guy, and that is going to be Nick Hague. Like that's the kind of player he is. And like you said, he can open up those shot lanes for Yossi. He's got the size, and I think that'll be good. So second pairing, like you said, Nick Blankenburg, great story. I hope for the Predators' sake that he is not on their second pairing again this year. Now it's great to know he can do it in case of, an injury or anything like that happening. But second pairing, who do you want to see with Brady Shea? Do you think it's Shea and Perbix together?
I think it is. I think it's Shea and Perbix together. And I like, Shea's 6'3", Perbix is 6'4", and they both move pretty well. I would say Shea moves a little bit better than Perbix does, but it's pretty like Perbix can move. So I like both of those guys together. And I think the size that they can bring to the table can be really good. Again, I think Brady Shea is going to be a lot better in year 2 than he was in year 1. So that would be definitely where I start. And I think, Barry Trotz has talked about, I think one time in the offseason, he used the phrase going to find a right-handed shot for Brady Shea. So I think that's where they're going to start Perbix. I think he's going to play with them.
All right. So now, goodness knows, we have plenty of left shot defensemen to choose from here in the Predators pipeline. But I think now, if you're assuming that Justin Barron is going to be your third pair on the right side, I think that that's a good spot for him. Who do you put on the left? It sounds like it's going to be Willsby, but I mean, what about a guy like Stastny, for example? We know now Delgaizo has moved on, but I mean, what do you think happens with Spencer Stastny here?
It's going to be really interesting because this needs to be the year from Stastny where he kind of breaks out, and I don't know that he's going to get the opportunity to right out of the gate. I would go Willsby. I mean, honestly, I thought when Willsby was healthy, his level of play was way better than Stastny and Delgaizo. Like I don't think it was particularly close. And I think that they were really excited about him. And I think probably one of the most unfortunate parts about how last year ended was that he wasn't a part of it and they didn't get to see him play longer, because I think they were really happy with what they saw. So I agree. Like, I think it's a huge year for Stastny. To me, if it's not going to happen with him here this year, it's probably not going to happen here based on where their defense is headed. And I know people want to see Molendyk there, and I think that you're going to see Molendyk there at some point this year. He's going to play, I think, probably a significant amount of games for them this year. I don't know that it's going to be immediately. I would probably start Willsby and Barron together and then go from there after that.
Yeah, I also don't love the idea of, if Molendyk were to make the opening night roster and his first foray into the NHL is playing on a third pair with Justin Barron. I don't know that that's the kind of safety net that you want to have for a top tier prospect coming into the NHL. All right, coming up, just going to do a quick turn around the league here, looking at some old friends, some former Predators, and where they've ended up via trade or free agency, and talk about what we think about it here coming up. All right, Robby. So lots of moving parts over the last week. We've seen, of course, the Predators did maybe some small game hunting, getting Nick Hague, getting Nick Perbix to sort of shore up the defense. They traded for Eric Haula as well. But looking, some former Predators have ended up other places around the league. I mentioned earlier Mark Delgaizo leaving, just signed a 1-year contract with the Montreal Canadiens. He rejoins Alex Carrier over there. Really exciting, young up and coming team in Montreal. We've also got some former Preds reuniting in Boston. Tanner Jeannot and Victor Arvidsson. What do you think about those two guys in Boston? I mean, Jeannot is Jeannot. We kind of know what he is, but
Yep.
what do you think about the fit for Arvidsson in Boston? Because it kind of seems like Boston's maybe trying to do the rebuild on the fly thing that Washington did, just because they have Pasternak. So what do you think? What kind of role do you think he plays there?
I don't think it's going to be a big one, and I can tell you, like I've somehow ended up on like Bruins Twitter on my For You page, and I can't for the life of me figure out how that's happened. But I can tell you, they're not very happy to have Tanner Jeannot and Victor Arvidsson. They are mad, and
Yeah.
I understand it to some degree. Like the Jeannot contract, like look for NHL GMs for some reason they love Tanner Jeannot, and look, I like Tanner Jeannot a lot too. It's still amazing to me the return the Predators got in that trade, and that Tampa Bay actually did that. And look, you look at the size, he can chip hit some offense. He's a very intimidating guy to play against. So I get the appeal. And he's always probably going to get a deal that you look at and say, wow, they gave Tanner Jeannot that much money, huh? And that long of a term. It's just the type, there's not many guys that are quite like him. So, like, honestly, Tanner Jeannot kind of feels like a Boston Bruin to me with the way that they've always played. So I'm interested to see him play there. I don't like the fit for Arvidsson at all. And look, if you've watched Arvidsson lately, he's been a shell of himself for a long time now. And I don't think that's going to change much in Boston.
Yeah, talking about Boston or Bruins Twitter, I've tried to stay out of those depths, but from Boston fans that I have come across, just talking to them, they really are not happy about getting Arvidsson. And it's hard because Predators fans, I think, remember him differently than he is now. I like you said, kind of a shell of himself. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. Now, this is something that is sure to, just stir up absolutely no kinds of feelings or emotions from anyone in the Predators fan base. But Yaroslav Askarov, he's Askarov now, right? He seems primed for that 1A position in San Jose. So San Jose, they went and they traded for Alex Nedeljkovic from Pittsburgh to kind of be a 1A, 1B. To me, I don't know if I'm in the minority here, Robby, but I feel like that's putting a lot of faith in Askarov, really kind of right off the bat. I don't know that he's ready to be a 1A yet. Not saying he never will be, but I don't know that he's there yet. I mean, he missed some time with injury last year. He spent a good amount of time in the AHL. I mean, what do you think of them just kind of full sending it with him?
I'm surprised by it. Like, look, at some point, I guess you take the philosophy of, hey, let's throw him in there and let's see what he can do. I think there's probably a better way to go about it than what they're like. Alex Nedeljkovic is not going to give you much. So you're going to be relying on Askarov to really come in and figure it out at the NHL level. I thought he was okay last year. Like I was looking at his numbers the other day. I think he's got like an 896 save percentage at the NHL level last year, which is not good. But look at the team around him. Like their defense is horrendous. They're a young team. They're going to continue to build. I like what they're building there. I don't know that they're ready to make a big jump yet, but I'm really interested to see how he handles that and how they view him at the end of it. Because remember, they've also drafted a goalie in the first round this year, and that's not going to come into effect anytime soon, I don't think. But I think if you're him, in the back of your mind, it's like, well, I guess at some point here in the next couple of years, I better show that I'm the goalie of the future. Or they're just going to be looking ahead to the next guy. So I found that part of it really interesting when they did that in the draft.
I also found that very interesting. I'm like sitting here waiting, like, okay, when's he going to demand a trade? Let's see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you would think that would be the kind of kick in the pants that someone would need to be like, hey, maybe you go out and stop talking and start showing. But yeah, I think I don't know. I will be watching that very closely. I think Nedeljkovic is he's a proven number 2 at the
Yeah.
NHL level. You can get probably like 30 games, 30, even, up to 40 games out of him if you needed to. But again, you're really asking a lot of Askarov there. And then finally, just want to round it out with two of, and again, sure to stir up absolutely no feelings from the Predators fan base, two of the top centers who are available on the free agent market, Matt Duchene and Mikael Granlund, have both landed new deals. Of course, Matt Duchene got the term that he wanted. He signed for 4 more years in Dallas. And then Mikael Granlund heads out west to the Anaheim Ducks. That one's interesting to me. I think Anaheim could be poised to make some noise this year. I think that they've been knocking on the door for the last couple seasons. They finally traded Zegras after talking about it for like years. Now that they've got Granlund, I think that he, I think it's funny when people were talking about, oh, he had a great career year last year in San Jose. It's like, well, yeah, because he was playing top line minutes because it was San Jose. He played more of a depth role in Dallas. But I think what's going to be important for Anaheim is if they do get to the point where they're able to make a run to the playoffs, that's where I think a guy like Granlund is going to be very beneficial to them because they've got a pretty young team that doesn't have that experience.
I really like what they've got. And, they've got Joel Quenneville coming in, and say what you will about that whole situation, but he is a good coach. Like, we know that it's demonstratively a good coach, and he's going to get them playing well. I like what they're building there. I wonder between them and Utah, who are both kind of building something with their young team. I think San Jose is still probably a year or two away, but Anaheim and Utah, I think, are both going to be a lot better this year. Can both of them get in the playoffs? I guess we'll have to see, but I think both of them are going to be a lot better. I like the move for Granlund. I think Granlund sees kind of what they're building out there, and I think they've got a chance to be good. Yes, this year, but certainly when you get into year 2 and 3 of that contract, I think Anaheim has a chance to be really good at that point. The Duchene part of it, like Duchene, I know people still get mad about that decision by Barry Trotz. I still understand what he was trying to do there. And I said from the moment he signed in Dallas, it's the perfect spot for him because he didn't have to come in and be the guy. I thought when he signed there, he was like their 4th best forward, 5th best forward, which is exactly what he was. And then he goes out last year and he leads them in scoring. So it's a great spot for him. You go look at his playoff numbers and you're like, where's he go in the playoffs? I don't think he's really a playoff type of player, but I think in the spot that he's in, the money that they're paying him and the role that he plays for Dallas, I think it's perfect. I thought he would have been an idiot if he left. So I'm glad that he chose to go back there.
And not only the money he's getting from Dallas, but the money he's still getting from the Predators for the next several years. So that'll be nice and fun to watch. I agree with you, though. Anaheim and Utah, I'm watching them very closely. Utah might have a tougher path to the playoffs just because we know how tough this division is. But definitely I think they're knocking on the door of something. They're going to be scary. All right. And on that just really uplifting note, that's going to do it for today's episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you again for making us the first listen of your day. Thank you, as always, again to Robby Stanley from 1025 The Game. How can the people follow you, Robby?
Yeah, on X at rstanleyNHL, and check it out at nhl.com as well.
And you can find me on Twitter at Emma_Lingan. You can also find my other work at the Hockey News. Again, wishing our best to my usual partner in crime, Ann Kimmel, who's away from the show this week, but hope to see her back here soon. And for now, have a have a safe and happy July 4th weekend, everyone, and we will talk to you next week.